You are listening to the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks.
For you Auburn fans, welcome to No Huddle, your source for Auburn football news and discussion, part of the E2C Network. I'm AJ Richardson, and I'm also here with somebody pretty special to me. And it's not Jared. Sorry, buddy. I know you're on your little trip. We do miss you, but someone even more special to me is my dad. And my dad did do a podcast with Kyle a few months ago, doing his, telling his Auburn roots story. But I just thought, why not, while Jared's still out, bring in my dad and let's talk through this loss. This is you get to hear some of the conversations that my dad and I have after some of these tough losses and how we process it. So, Dad, how you doing?
It's always glad to be with you, son. It's tough to have these conversations after a loss, but we can look forward to positive things in the future. How about that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and there have been plenty of tough losses that, we've sat in the stadium together. I think one of the more recent ones was last week against Mississippi State, walking out of that stadium. And it's just rough. Like, you expect to win, and yet, you see this, slow trickle of us losing. And this game was kind of the same way. I feel like it wasn't as bad personally, but it was a bad loss. Where's this kind of, if you had to compare, the South Carolina loss in your mind to what happened last week against Mississippi State, kind of how do you rank those?
Sure. I would rank the South Carolina loss as worse, not just because it was third loss in a row, but I'm pretty sure from almost any measure, Mississippi State is a better football team overall than South Carolina. Granted, we were playing South Carolina on the road, but the Mississippi State game that hurt badly, giving so many points in the second half, and then to have that repeated again in the South Carolina game, as a difference, I think the South Carolina game, our play calling and execution was what really killed us. And throw in a few extra comments about the officiating, but there's nothing we could do about that.
Right. And even, say, a couple of calls did go Auburn's way instead of South Carolina's way. I don't think it would have necessarily changed, the results of the game. Now, you could probably argue, hey, it didn't hit, Jalen's leg. Okay, we have a minute and a half to drive down the field. Well, the issue is, in my mind, we hadn't put up points except for, I guess, a field goal since the first quarter. And we have to drive down like 80 something yards and score a touchdown there. That's a pretty tall task anyway, especially with your backup quarterback. Now, if we had Bo in there, I think we'd have a little bit more confidence. And if we had, for example, Kobe Hudson, one of our leading receivers, but we didn't. And that I think that kind of hurts us, from an injury standpoint, but I think it just didn't give us the kind of momentum that we needed. And I did want to talk about one of the, key plays that happened in this loss that I think this took all the momentum out of Auburn, was that 4th and 1 play where we were at our 30-yard line, I think, somewhere around there, 35, somewhere around there. And we decided to go for it. 4th and 1, we're running the ball well. I don't have a problem with that personally, but we decided to pass the ball. I just kind of want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was in favor of going for it, but you saw some extra oomph with Tank Bigsby in this game, extra effort. He was playing angry. You had the option, 4th and very short yardage, either hand it off to Tank, let him do his job, which he had been doing carry after carry, or you've got a Cam Newton-sized quarterback in TJ Finley, who proved at least one other time in the game he can quarterback sneak for 2 or 3 yards,
right,
with his size. And that, to me, you're Auburn's in its own territory, so that's dangerous to go for it on 4th down anyway. But you have 2 options that are much higher percentage than going for that long shot of a long pass to, I think it was Demetrius Robertson that was streaking, and it was just overthrown like some other passes during the game.
Right. Yeah. And this is where, I was even having this discussion with my wife during that play, or right after that play. My wife was like, well, yeah, like Bobo's calling the plays, but like, doesn't Harsin have the final say in that? And I think usually in big scenarios like this, I think usually Harsin does. So I think, everybody's blaming Bobo right now, but I think Harsin should take some of that blame for not saying, what the heck are you doing? Don't do that. Run Tank Bigsby or have TJ Finley do another quarterback sneak for just for a yard. That's all you need. And there's going to be plenty of criticisms of coaches, and I think it's rightly due, especially over, the last 3 and maybe even more games. Like, we've had some bad coaching decisions that have put our players in bad situations, but I think there's also the execution as well. It's been subpar. Definitely the players have admitted that in their press conferences as well. But it ultimately comes down to the people who are making money. It's not on the 18 to 22-year-olds that are going through school full time and playing football. I know, they're on the field. Like, there's, partial, but like, it all comes back to the coaches, in my opinion. Kind of, where do you stand with, who should be blamed and where you see the issues in this game?
I definitely think there was that 4th and 1 call. There was another short yardage call, maybe 2-3 yards, that whether it was Bobo or in combination with Harsin, they opted for the long bomb, which was a nightmare, reminding of how Coach Malzahn used to do that. So they were notorious for dialing up a bomb on a short yardage play.
Right.
In my mind, you lean on your offensive line, you lean on your running back who's having an all-star game, or you put it in your quarterback's hands for a sneak. There were a couple of times during the game where that was very questionable. Certainly we had dropped passes. TJ started extremely hot, I thought, on his scripted plays. He was putting the ball where it needed to be, and as the game went on, the execution was lacking. So certainly it was a combination: coaching, preparation, making adjustments during the game. Like most Auburn fans, we're at somewhat of a loss as to how you can jump out to strong starts and then falter.
Right. And let's talk about that. I saw a tweet from, I think it was Josh Vitale, he used to cover, he definitely used to cover Auburn, but he kind of pulled out this stat, which I just think is kind of telling. Over our last 3 losses, Auburn in the first quarter, cumulatively, we've beat our opponents 31-6. That's over the last 3 games. The next 3 quarters, so second, third, and fourth quarters of those 3 games, our opponents have scored 78 points to Auburn's 23 points. To me, that's saying we get out, like you said, to that great start, and then we slow down. Now, I know some of those have been just offensive, I don't know what's going on. The defense adjusts to us, it seems like. But I kind of want to get your thoughts, because that seemed, again, to be a theme here against South Carolina. Any idea what's going on and why we're, getting out to those hot starts and then kind of tapering off, in those last 3 quarters usually?
Sure. And, in this game, we're up 2 touchdowns, end up being outscored 21-3 in the next quarters of the game. Looked very familiar to the 40 unanswered points versus Mississippi State. And, we got to find an answer to that. The offense disappearing in the second half, whether it's adjustments by the coaching staff, which you got to think, jumping ahead here, but Coach Beamer from South Carolina basically laughing that hey, we ran the same play over and over again, or the same two plays over and
Right.
over again in the second half. And Auburn couldn't stop us.
Yeah.
You gotta wonder about adjustments at that point. Sure, we're short some years of good recruiting, and hopefully that trajectory is headed up with Harsin and his recruiters. So I think things are looking up, but we gotta face facts now and make corrections with the players we got.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, the coach's job, in my view, and in most people's view, is, especially new coaches, you gotta use the players you have and put them in a position to win. I think early in the games, our coaches, I think, have done that. They've succeeded. We've been up ahead of teams, and then it's the slow. I don't know if it's the lack of focus later down the road, or I think even one of our players recently said, yeah, we just, got relaxed. We weren't, as we were in the beginning of the game. It just kind of went away. I think that kind of comes back to coaching too. Like, call a timeout, tell your guys, you need to focus. You need to fix this right now before, something bad happens.
I'm very excited about the strong starts Auburn has had the last few weeks. 14-0 this week. Looked like Auburn could take charge. They took the crowd out of the game in a visiting stadium that's can be loud. And
what I gotta hear your opinion on this. What did you think of all those rooster crows going on during the game? Did you hear those?
Oh yeah, that gets old. It kind of reminded me of when Auburn played USC in a bowl game back in the day, and their band plays that same war chant thing over and over again. In South Carolina, they just do the rooster crow over and over again. So yes, that was hard to listen to, but maybe a little bit easier watching that one on TV versus the poor folks who had to listen to it all game long in the stadium.
That's rough. I mean, like I kind of ranked that up there. We went to 2013, the national championship game against FSU, and it was like that song, that whatever chant that they do, that chant gets old real quick when you're on the other side of that, and that
I like
almost
it when
ranks
the Braves
up there.
do it, but not Florida State.
Right. That's right. I like it when the Braves do it, especially national champs, or not national champs,
World Series
Series champs. I had to switch my mind from football to baseball real quick. But I did want to let's get into some specifics about this game. Offense, I think TJ did mostly what he was, supposed to do. Yeah, he wasn't great. His stat line, was 17 of 32 passing, 188 yards, had a touchdown pass. But he also had some issues. He fumbled the ball a couple times. Both resulted in negative plays. He overthrew some passes, which, hey, we've criticized Bo about that. I think, it's hard. You got to put the touch on it. And, any quarterback will probably tell you it's hard to do that on a consistent basis and hit those long passes. And kind of on top of that, I mean, you got some great plays out of him. You had he was caught in the backfield on a 3rd and 5, and he somehow gets out of, like 2 or 3 guys had their hands on him, and he gets the first down. Kind of reminded me of like Bodini or Bo Nix, when he just gets out of plays and gets to that first down mark, and you're like, how the heck? I thought that was about to be a sack. And he gets
absolutely
the first down.
That one play where he was surrounded, he was as sure as sacked, and you see him pop out of the crowd of defenders and gain several yards that he shouldn't have. It's like that's effort, that size. You saw that with Cam Newton, certainly.
Oh yeah,
great many times, but that was excellent. TJ his athleticism is different than Bo's, and he's not as much of a threat in the running game or a read option type situation, but he can sure break tackles if he has to.
Right. Yeah, and he did that when he needed to. And I think the times that South Carolina did get to him, I think South Carolina would have gotten to Bo as well. Like, and I think that, kind of ties into, we've seen some struggles on offensive line and pass protection. And again, struggled again. But I will say this, maybe it was just South Carolina's, front seven, but we ran the ball pretty effectively against South Carolina, which was a positive in my mind, especially for Tank. I mean, goodness knows, Tank just needed to have a really good game. And I think he had a really good game. I also think Tank could have had an even better game. I mean, he ended up with 164 yards, averaged 7.5 yards per touch, but I think he could have done better. I mean, I honestly do. I think he could have had a lot more. And again, maybe I'm harping on, coaching issues a little bit, but when a guy's hot like that and you need him and keep drives alive, give the ball to Tank.
Give him the ball. It's the same in football and basketball. Somebody's hot, and feed him the ball. And
right.
Tank obviously wanted that. He had, for whatever reason, he had an extra want to in this game, and we gave him lots of opportunities, and he took advantage of them, and a few more would have made a difference, I think
so too. I mean, we're at the end of the season. It's not like we're necessarily worried about, Tank, at least in this season, potentially wearing him down, because he's literally got one more regular season game after this, and then, bowl game. I think maybe early in the year, maybe you kind of put a cap on him and say you only run, 20 times in a game. But this is a game where I think if Tank runs even 5, 6, 7 more times, we win the game, because Tank had that tenacity and I keep hearing the word anger, and I think that's a good word to describe what was going on. You saw it in his face. He wanted the first down. He wanted Auburn to do well. And to have a backup quarterback, have a guy that you can hand the ball off to, like Tank, it's got to give you confidence. And so I'm hoping we kind of say, all right, let's give Tank a little bit more of the ball, going forward. So I also thought Jarquez did a pretty good job when he came in. He got, his yards in there. Wasn't, he didn't do anything bad. I will say this, and I noticed this on a couple kickoffs. Jarquez got a couple tackles. Do you remember that? I don't know if you noticed that. I was like, that's awesome.
A fantastic tackle on a kickoff play.
Yeah. And that's pretty cool. I every time I think about kickoff, I'm like, oh, cool. You just put your best defensive tacklers out there. No, we're putting out our running back out there, and just all out athlete, find the dude, hit him. He did it. He did it well. So little shout out to him.
Hey, Auburn fans, I want to take a quick timeout from this episode to bring your attention to something very special. Here at the E2C Network, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best content for Auburn fans out there. And best of all, it's free to you. But just because it's free doesn't mean there aren't costs, especially when you have a library of hundreds of podcasts, videos, blogs, and more. Many of you have reached out and asked how you can support this network in the past. Well, now I have your answer. It's called the E2C Network Booster Club over at patreon.com/E2C Network. There you'll find a membership monthly reward system where you can sign up for as little as $1 and get different perks at different tiers. Some of those perks include things such as apparel, eligibility to join us on future podcasts, recognition as an E2C Network booster, exclusive communications, and bonus content that is available nowhere else. If you love this network and want to help us keep producing podcasts like this one, please head on over to patreon.com/E2C Network to join the E2C Network Booster Club. You can also get there by going to our website, e2cnetwork.com/support. Whether you decide to join or not, we are still so appreciative that you would support us by just listening and being here, because each and every one of you is part of our E2C Network family. Well, that's it. Timeout's over. Let's get back into the episode.
I do want to talk about wide receivers for a little bit, because I think we've been so up and down with wide receivers this year. We've had games where it just, the Georgia game, drop passes after drop pass. And then we come back and, wide receivers can't seem to drop, drop any passes. They catch everything. And this game was kind of one of those mixed bags. We had, I think, it was a career high for Shedrick Jackson with 111 yards on 7 receptions. After that, it was a pretty big drop off after that. And not a whole lot of guys got, really any significant, yardage. We had a couple with some bigger catches, but that was about it. Demetrius Robertson, he scored a touchdown, but like besides that, he was targeted 8 times and only had 3 receptions. To me, that's almost unacceptable. Like from a wide receiver, like that percentage of, you're thrown at, you should catch more than 3 out of 8. Maybe that's just me, but that's my perception of, a wide receiver at this level, especially one that's starting for Auburn.
I was fairly impressed with South Carolina's defensive backs. They had some very athletic plays where they tipped the ball away at the last minute. And certainly you can look back, there were 2 or 3 iffy plays where I would have called pass interference, but I'm a homer. So
right. Me too.
But I wonder where I great get that athletic from. Plays too. Exactly, son. I thought Javarius Johnson, he had 3 catches for 27 yards. JJ had a decent game, but you'd like to see more production there. Very quiet from the tight ends. Johnson Schinker was out there, but just I think either wasn't targeted or would have liked to have seen more production there.
Yeah, I was
certainly time with TJ Finley will in practice and in games will ramp up the connection between quarterback and receivers.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing throughout the game, that this is really, I know TJ has had, I'm sure, first team reps, probably throughout the season, practice this season. But Bo's been the number one. So like, TJ's getting reps with the 2s, if not 3rd string. And so that takes some timing. I mean, it took timing for Bo Nix early this season to, get that timing down. And will another week be enough? I don't know, but they've got to work on it, and maybe stay after practice a couple of times extra this week and work on that connection, because we need it. Bama's their defense is pretty good next week, and they're not the greatest, but they're pretty good, and we got to be able to attack in the air as well as on the ground. Let's talk about defense just for a little bit. I just was thinking back on this. Like, the defense wasn't the worst, but it wasn't what I was expecting. I knew South Carolina could run the ball. They did run the ball very well. Their leading running back, White, had an average of 6.2 yards per carry, which anytime you hear that, defense, especially the front 7, just didn't do their job. And then you just got to think, like, a couple of times, like, Derek Mason called that extra pressure on 4th and 2. This was like, second quarter. This kind of swung the momentum towards South Carolina, and, they got a touchdown out of it. There are multiple times like that where, defense, in most games, if you hold a team to 21 points, you're thinking you got a chance. But in a game where Auburn's offense just wasn't doing anything, defense just needed to do maybe one more thing, cause an extra fumble, something, I think, to make a difference in this one.
It was particularly tough to watch our coverage of the running backs out of the backfield against South Carolina. You mentioned Zaquandre White. He averaged 6 yards carry, but he also had that receiving touchdown that when we came with extra rushers, and they took advantage of that. Jason Brown, South Carolina's quarterback, found the open man and he scored.
Yeah.
It was also hard to watch that we didn't adjust to the South Carolina running backs trying to bounce the ball outside. They just ate us up acting like they were going to go up the middle, and then they would bounce it out, and we could not contain them, and they got some big plays bouncing the ball to the boundaries.
Yeah. And I agree. Like I wish we had adjusted for that and, maybe brought a DB in there, to set the edge. Like when I played defensive back, my job was push everything into the inside, like keep it in the middle of the field. And especially on run plays, you got to do that. That needed to happen more. And I was a little frustrated with that. Like it just seemed like, and us as fans, we thought, why is this doing the same thing over and over? And come to find out they were doing the same thing, same two things over and over and over. That's frustrating. Like a defense at this level should be able to adjust to that, and we just weren't. I will say
touchdown we gave up was their heavy set fullback. Rolled out of the backfield and caught the touchdown pass right at the end zone.
Right.
And that was, we were not covering the running backs well.
No. Like in pass coverage, running the ball. And again, that should be an emphasis, especially, South Carolina's on their third string quarterback. They're not going to put a lot on their quarterback who's a third stringer. And they beat us because they just kept handing the ball off, or gave him a simple pass to a running back rolling out of the backfield.
It seemed shocking, but South Carolina only threw 15 passes.
Right, but I think I think the 10 that he completed were very effective. It wasn't like, it's a little screen pass, we tackle him for a loss. No, it was
out of his
like
10 completions, he had 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. That's a fantastic ratio for a quarterback. Yeah. And you know what? It was also, we talk about, putting pressure on, especially, quarterbacks that don't have as much experience. And we did that pretty well. I think in the first half, we had 3 sacks. The rest of the game, I think we only had 1 sack. You got to keep that pressure coming. And it gives the quarterback too much time, gets too comfortable, and that's what happens. Oh man,
very, very proud of our offensive line. Talk about a positive. I think South Carolina only had 2 sacks. So
that's true. Yeah,
we did a fairly good job of protecting TJ Finley in his first start for Auburn, which was ironic because last year when TJ Finley was playing for the LSU Tigers, that was also his first start for LSU against South Carolina.
Yeah.
So from familiar territory for him.
Right. I thought that was pretty ironic that it just so happened that both of his starts for different teams were for the same team. Like that has to be some sort of, record somewhere. I did want to hit on, and Dad, you had mentioned this on your Auburn roots, but your dad went to Northwestern, and watching Eku Leota, who transferred from Northwestern, him get a sack, which I love him. He has been pretty good for the most part, and honestly, I honestly kind of thought of him, he'd just come in on definite pass downs. I'm seeing him more and more on the field than just on pass downs, which I think is a pretty cool growing thing for him. What do you think of Eku and how he's developed into more of a well-rounded defensive lineman?
Yeah, as a transfer from Northwestern, and he just plays with a lot of energy, and I think he's going to have a big game in the Iron Bowl. He had against South Carolina, he had a tackle for loss and a sack, and I think maybe another quarterback hurry.
Yeah,
that he didn't quite get there, but he affected their quarterback, and it caused an incompletion. So we need all those defensive guys to step up, particularly as we move toward the Iron Bowl. Pressure on Bryce Young is going to be a big time key.
Yeah, definitely. I did see a little bit of a drop off from the linebackers than what we had seen in the past. I was, particularly looking at Zacoby McClain, who's in the past been really good at stopping the run. I know we kind of shifted a little bit and didn't have our linebackers, 3-4 yards off the ball. They were up at the line a lot of times, which, kind of, it did stop a lot of times the ball at the line of scrimmage, but then like we had mentioned, it bounced the ball out. You got to have somebody ready to kind of turn them back in. And
South Carolina actually took advantage of that when we had the linebackers basically playing defensive line right up on the line. They ran the ball, and if you happen to get enough of a hole for the running back, which they did a couple of times, there's no second line of defense. The linebackers are running after him, and South Carolina burned us a couple of times on that.
Right, and that's, again, I wish we had made some adjustment there so those plays didn't happen, because I wasn't necessarily thinking, this South Carolina team is that great, but they just kept finding, these huge plays, 9, 10, 15-yard runs on a first down, and they keep getting first downs. And it wasn't anything like, super amazing. It was, the running back was doing his job, and the offensive line was opening up holes, and Auburn wasn't able to stop it, which, I'm kind of disappointed in. I wish we had done a little bit better on that. I did want to call out and a couple more good things that did happen. Donovan Kaufman got himself an interception, ran the ball out a good bit. I love that. I have honestly, with the way we play kind of more zone this year under Derek Mason, I was thinking we should have had a lot more of these, where the safeties, have their eyes on the quarterback, reading their eyes and reading the pass. And then Donovan Kaufman does that perfectly. It could have easily been a touchdown, and Donovan Kaufman returns it. And those are the big plays that we needed earlier in the season. But hey, it's good to see, the development of our defense under Derek Mason start to figure things out.
That was a momentum changer. You tie that into Auburn had 7 tackles for loss. Donovan Kaufman had that great interception, big return, stopped a South Carolina drive in its tracks as they were moving the ball down the field. There's some very, very big positives. We outgained, look at the stats, we outgained South Carolina 379 yards to 306. Limited South Carolina on third down conversions. They only converted 1 of 9. So
that's pretty good.
You look at some of the stats and you think, if you looked at that blindly, you'd think Auburn won this game.
Right.
But I think Coach Harsin said in his post-game news conference, 17 points. It seemed like we should have more than 17 points. Well, yes, Coach, we agree.
Right.
There were South Carolina bowed up their backs and stopped us when they needed to, and swapped the momentum a couple of times, and takes points to win ball games.
Yeah. And in this league, it's touchdowns. You got to put up touchdowns, not just field goals. Which kind of leads me into our last little segment here about special teams. I think special teams, again, was not great. It's kind of to be expected at this point. I fully expect, honestly, us to have a new special teams coach next year because of how this special teams has just not performed well, had holding, had blocks in the backs, just done dumb things that, a special team shouldn't do. Like when you have a return out to the 45-yard line and then it gets called back because of a holding, you're just like, okay, like this is not where we want to be. We get pushed back to like the 20 at that point. Like that negates any kind of positive momentum that a kickoff or a punt return would have had. And again, we have similar things going on in this game. We did have, Anders Carlson, who was out because he tore his ACL, had a successful ACL surgery, is on the mend now. But we had Ben Patton step in for him. He was our backup left-footed kicker, which my wife's a left-handed person, so I was big rooting for him. I mean, it's cool also just, have a backup kicker in there, actually kicking some good, meaningful field goals. He did nail a 37-yarder But he did miss a 25-yard field goal. If he had made it, maybe it would have, kept Auburn's momentum coming back towards us. But it's a backup kicker. Like, it's a big game.
You got to make 25-yarders.
I agree.
He pulled it, and it wasn't blocked. He looked like he struck it well, but wide right. And certainly Carlson Anders has had similar struggles this year. I think he's only made 2/3 of his field goals, had a couple blocked. And like you said, we've got some work to do on special teams. Great kickoff returns, I thought, by Jarquez Hunter, overcoming some of the penalties, the blocks in the back or holding that we got called for on those. We got to clean that up because we had some opportunities to break some kick returns, and you got to take advantage of that, especially on the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any other kind of final thoughts before we get out of here?
I was encouraged. I mean, I thought there were some good things. Our running game at about 6 yards per carry was strong. We've got to carry that over into the future. We've got to tighten up some things on defense. Some good things on defense as far as sacks and tackles for loss. But from an execution standpoint, we've got to do that. We really haven't talked about the phantom muffed punt at the end. Certainly that would have given us the ball again with not a lot of time, and we hadn't really been moving the ball, but put South Carolina in. If they go to prevent defense, TJ Finley could pull an ending like he did with Georgia State.
Right. Yeah.
So that really hurt. And, some of the play calls, particularly with short yardage and 3rd and short, 4th and short, really hurt us. But, that phantom muff punt at the end just left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. Clearly, there wasn't enough video evidence to reverse what was the correct call on the field.
Right.
But the refs somehow saw it a different way.
Right. And Jared put in our group me, and I'll share this with you and our listeners, which may have, I'm putting on my tinfoil conspiracy theorist hat right now. So imagine that. But I think that call might have, just been the nail in the coffin from the SEC, because guess what? South Carolina being bowl eligible, which, last night's win got them bowl eligible. The SEC got $4 million because South Carolina was bowl eligible. I'm just saying.
I would hate to think I would believe that kind of conspiracy theory, but maybe so, because that was a big win for Coach Beamer. What turns out not such a great win over Florida a game or two ago, and then this upset of Auburn getting to 6 wins in his first coaching year at South Carolina is certainly big for him. I really liked his dad, who coached at Virginia Tech for years. And great defensive special teams mind. And so he's got a great pedigree, and he seems like a likable guy. But anyway, certainly would have rather the good Tigers come out with a win here.
Right. I agree. All right. To kind of wrap things up, how can the people stay in touch with you?
I'll go with Jared and Facebook and Twitter.
And you can find me on Twitter at AJAY_. It's always great to be an Auburn Tiger and War Eagle.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.